$1,000 drop in less than a month is the story that Sandisk is telling us. And that wouldn't be an issue by itself, as it was trading at nearly $2,400 at the peak. But it has just broken the relevant levels of support that would have allowed direct continuation to higher prices, which does have some severe implications. So by the end of this video, you will know exactly the next levels of support we can track for this stock, but probably even more importantly, the risk of the structure that has just developed, as well as the smaller time frame path that I'm tracking and the levels of resistance it needs to break to indicate a high likelihood that a bottom could be in. Welcome to the trade setup. So let's start with the implication. The implication of breaking the latest level is that the wave 3 top could be in. What does that mean? It means that what comes next is the larger wave 4 correction. This means that the minimum expectations we would have in such a scenario, in terms of a retracement, in terms of the correction itself, would be for it to reach around $900. Does it have to stop there? No, it doesn't get away that easy. It can extend all the way down to $300, and this would not break by any means the larger time frame expectations that an impulse would form for this stock. So yes, it could see a 90% drop or a near 90% drop from the peak and still maintain the larger time frame expectations. Now, this is not to scare you. This is probably the most bearish scenario I could consider for this stock. And even this would expect continuation to new all-time highs afterwards within a wave 5. But I want you to be prepared for what is probably the most bearish scenario that is also somewhat realistic. Yes, even in the most bearish scenario, I would actually prefer the trend to continue. Now here's the thing. Even if this stock has broken internal levels of support, it can actually extend higher. There are structures that would allow quite easily further extensions, but the risk has increased significantly. Technically, I could even see a recovery within the currently available count where this wave 4 would have a bottom in. It's after all only a single daily candle that closed significantly below the 50% retracement. But I simply do not really have faith in this scenario anymore. And what I need to do is look for the next levels of support that would allow this pattern to extend. And while I can technically still consider this structure to work out, I will not be tracking it. I will share with you the exact structure in the smaller time frame a bit later in this video, but before I do that, I will show you another green warning sign that we see here on the daily time frame, and it's the volume. We have not yet seen a decrease as the stock price has dropped further and further down. No, in fact, it has increased in the last 3 trading days, where we have seen an 8% drop, a 12% drop, and most recently Friday, a 4% drop. What does this mean? Well, it means that the selling could very easily even accelerate. It could have just begun. And really the only positive thing that we can extract from all of these developments, this structure, this volume, is that in the last trading day, while the volume has seen an actual peak, and I'm not focused specifically on it having a peak, but simply being high, but it's only seen a 4% drop. So this is a small indication that a bit more buyers have been stepping in to maintain these levels. We may see a bit of a reversal, at the very least a relief rally, but that is rather a small counter argument to what would rather be a bearish thesis. Now, with that said, if we zoom out, we actually see an even greater warning sign. The volume has been decreasing significantly as we have gotten further and further within this trend. And if you look at volume alone, it may be rather a bit misleading. Of course, it's going to require more and more buyers to push the price higher, as the volume is tracking the number of shares that are being traded. The share is getting more expensive, so of course, everyone is going to be able to buy fewer and fewer shares. Does this remove the concern that I just mentioned? Unfortunately, no. While we aren't looking necessarily at as bad of a situation as we see in this decline, the momentum is certainly not increasing, but probably rather decreasing. So that is a warning sign we need to consider. It is well known that within a trend, as it gets closer and closer to the top, volume starts to see decline. As volume sees the decline, it is going to become more and more difficult to find higher prices, leading to significant tops. Now, with all of that said, let's get into the actual structure, because while we do have these concerns, it doesn't mean that it cannot extend higher. In fact, I do still believe in the overall sector to have, at the very least, one additional push before seeing a more substantial top, and we can also apply this for this stock. So, within this structure, what I'm tracking is the larger wave 3. Now, you could be considering that, given the strength of this development, the wave 3 of the larger wave 3 would still be unfolding. It might not be so much the case. I would much rather believe that the wave 3 had in fact topped here, this being only a very extended wave 5. The fortunate part, within this wave 5 we actually can fit an additional couple of 1-2 setups, where even if this structure is complete, we could see further extensions, and we actually have yet another angle to track, where the wave 4, this white wave 4, would have bottomed here, and it's not an exactly ideal structure that has formed from that low, but we can maybe get around with tracking this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Maybe even another scenario would work out, but the main idea would be that this structure, this supposed wave 5, would be able to fit a 4th and a 5th to complete the pattern. Because while the implication would right now be that this move up is complete, we would need one additional high to complete this larger move up. So we have a number of different interpretations that would still allow extensions higher. And there is actually even another possibility. Even in the case of having this white wave 3 have a top in, I wouldn't be surprised for this stock to manage to build an overshoot, a larger ABC pattern, where within the current development, it doesn't even need to reach the first level of support for the large wave 4. To remind you, that's at $900. Then it would be able to build a 3-wave pattern to new all-time highs, ultimately building an ABC structure where within the wave C, it would be able to reach the first level of support possibly, then reversing to new all-time highs within the last move of this entire pattern. So there is no scarcity when it comes to the various options we have to track continuation higher. The question is rather within the smaller time frame, where the focus should rather be on the internal structure, where we can track various levels of support for continuation higher, but the internal structure would be telling us the levels of resistance that we need to watch for a potential reversal. And the levels of support that I'm tracking here in yellow extend down to $1,150. So far we have gotten to the 38.2% retracement, technically the ideal target for the wave 4, but unfortunately the correction hasn't stayed true to my primary expectation, hasn't stayed true to building this white ABC pattern where within the wave C I was tracking an ending diagonal. This could have allowed a bottom to be quite imminent, and technically the count would remain valid. Even now, we could see one additional low within this orange wave 5, where the count would still remain intact and in fact become full, right? Within this orange wave C, I would have something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Possible, but not necessary. In fact, I would have probably preferred for the wave 5 to already have a bottom in within this interpretation, as the wave C would rather be complete in my opinion. But nonetheless, I do not believe this count works anymore. I would still be looking for an ABC pattern, but given the extension we have seen within this structure, it is much more likely in my opinion that the developed pattern would have had the wave A bottom here, the wave B top here, and then right now the wave C would be in full development, where I would honestly expect at the very least one additional low. I will provide you the levels of resistance in a moment to track that additional low. Now, what I'm tracking within this structure would be an ABC pattern within the wave A, something like a wave A down here, a wave B that might have unfolded as a triangle, but it doesn't really matter too much, It could have been an ABC here, then a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 within the wave C, or it could have been a triangle A, B, C, D, E, and all the same 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 within the wave C. The main implication is that the wave A had bottomed here, in which case the ideal target for the wave C is the 100% extension of the wave A, which sits at $1,230. That level has not been reached, and it doesn't need to be, but I would still expect to see a 5-wave pattern form for this wave C. And let's say we actually track this in orange. Now, the focus moves into the smaller time frame within this wave C, where we have a couple of possible additional extensions. I would primarily track, however, that this would have been part of an internal wave 3 where the wave 1 would have bottomed here, the wave 2 would have topped here, and the wave 3 could have technically bottomed here, but I wouldn't be too surprised of an extension. And anyhow, once we complete this next low, we could consider the bottom to be in. I am not too set on having the wave B top here, but if that is to be the case, it will need to account for another wave 4 correction to form and the wave 5 to complete this pattern. So in that interpretation, the wave 1 would have bottomed here, of the wave C I mean, and right now we would be looking to still complete the wave 3 itself, where we would need one additional low afterwards. Is this the only possible count? Unfortunately, no. And I cannot even dismiss the possibility of an ending diagonal within this orange wave C, where the wave 1 would have bottomed here. This would have been the wave 2 top, wave 3 down, wave 4 up, wave 5 down. This is another interpretation that would allow the bottom to form sooner, but what I like about this interpretation is that it allows me to track the most relevant levels of resistance, the levels of resistance, where if we get a sustained break, we can have pretty high confidence that a bottom would be in. We can have high confidence that if the levels of resistance up to $1,600 get a sustained break, the most likely outcome is to have a bottom in, is to consider that we will not see any further extensions. Then could I give you different levels of resistance? Certainly. In fact, if we track the initial count, this as a wave 3 currently in development, we can even notice within the wave 4 it has pushed perfectly into the 38.2% retracement, the ideal target, right before getting this major rejection that already seems likely to be heading to lower prices. So what to get away from this video? The larger time frame would primarily easily allow extensions higher, but from a smaller time frame perspective, unless we manage to break the levels of resistance that I've shared here in white, up to $1,600, there is a good chance we will see even lower prices, and it will need to form a new attempt of having a full count, of seeing a bottom. And one more thing before we end the video, one small addition. The levels of structural support between $1,300 down to about $1,280, $70, about there, could be expected to be of use in forming a local low, in forming a relief rally, possibly completing this orange wave 5 within that region. But for now, this is about all the data that we can extract from this stock. There is unfortunately a decently large number of various different interpretations that could fit, but these are the most likely paths in my opinion. So this is about it from me. If you want even more, you can check out the Patreon. But for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. And if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.